Hello, and welcome back to the Crime Reel. For this week's true crime narration, we shall be returning to 1990s London to look at the events of the Mardi Gras bombings. Tuesday, 6th of December 1994, started as a regular business day for the employees of Barclays Bank, one of the oldest banking institutions in the United Kingdom. As employees began their day at work, 6 different branches of the bank received identical packages wrapped in patterned Christmas paper. Inside these Christmas presents were video cassette cases, and unknown to the staff at the bank, inside these video cassette cases were letter bombs. At 8:30 a.m. that morning, in the Barclays branch in Hampstead, North London, the mail was being sorted. As the Christmas present was opened, the small, crudely designed bomb inside detonated. Minutes later, another blast occurred, this time in the Ladbroke Grove branch. The blasts were relatively small, and thankfully there were no serious injuries. A couple of staff members at each of the branches suffered from minor burns to their hands and faces, and one suffered a temporary loss of hearing. The police believed that if the contents of the bomb had been packaged differently, the blast would have been far more severe. Quick-thinking staff called around the other branches, and the remaining 4 bombs were successfully defused. On each of the 6 bombs there was an identical calling card, a still picture of 4 men wearing black suits which looked as though it could have been taken from the film Reservoir Dogs. On the picture, it also had the words, "Welcome to the Mardi Gras Experience." For unknown reasons, whether it was a mistake or had some additional meaning, the S had been omitted from the word Gras. In order to aid their investigation, the police asked the press to remain silent about the bombings. They were investigating on the assumption that they were the work of a disgruntled former employee of the bank. In early 1995, the head of security of Barclays, based in their headquarters at Northampton, received a letter demanding £10 million, otherwise the bombing campaign would continue. There was no information as to how this money should be paid. The letter was signed from a Mardi Graham. From May 1995, the bombings escalated. At least 15 bombs were sent to various addresses during the year. While several of these bombs were sent to branches of Barclays banks, others were sent to private homes, pubs, offices, shops, or even left in telephone boxes. These packages were received throughout London as well as in Buckinghamshire, Cambridge, Hertfordshire, Kent, Middlesex, Northampton, and Surrey. Other than Barclays Bank, the locations and targets all appeared to be totally random. There seemed to be no pattern to the attacks. The only thing which they all had in common was that they often did not detonate, and on the occasions when they did, injuries and damage were minimal. The police believed that the person that they were dealing with was exerting their power, proving that they could strike at any time, anywhere, and constantly honing their bomb-making skills. As 1995 turned into 1996, the main target of the attacks once again became Barclays Bank. In January, a bomb was left inside a green and black plastic suitcase on a pavement in West Ealing. Then in February, the Elton branch of the bank was targeted. A letter, again signed from Mardi Graham, was sent to the offices of the newspaper, the Daily Mail. It read, "Mardi Gras is the code name of a small group of Barclays Bank victims who are in the process of reversing the tide of fortune into their favour after a year of inactivity. Our earlier devices were designed as frighteners to demonstrate political will, ability to strike, and access to a constant supply of explosive material. We are amazed that a bank or company appears to be able not to care who gets injured and get the police to keep quiet about it." Included within the letter was a photograph of an explosive device and a warning that the bomber would start targeting Barclays customers using cash point machines. The police had no choice. After 16 months, the media blackout came to an end, and the Mardi Gras bomber suddenly became front-page news. On 20th of April 1996, the bomber lived up to their threat. A package was left in an empty flower bed near the Barclays cash point at the same West Ealing branch that had been targeted 3 months earlier. The package exploded and 3 of the bank's customers were injured. Barclays, on the advice of the police, didn't concede to the bomber's demand for money. With Barclays' refusal to pay, the bomber changed their approach. In July 1996, they sent a demand to the head of security at the supermarket chain, Sainsbury's, for an undisclosed sum. In December of that year, another letter was sent to the Daily Mail, this time informing the newspaper that the bomber intended to start targeting female shoppers at Sainsbury's. Then, as suddenly as they started, the bombings stopped. Despite extensive investigation, little progress had been made to identify the bomber. Theories that it could be a policeman, former bank employee, an unhappy bank customer, or perhaps a former member of the armed services were all investigated, but eventually led nowhere. 11 months passed, with the case becoming colder and colder. Then, on the 15th of November 1997, the case became very active again very quickly. Over the following 3 days, 5 bombs were left in 5 different Sainsbury's stores. Each bomb was left inside a Sainsbury's plastic bag to make it appear that someone had forgotten their shopping. The bombs were hidden in video cassette cases of a film called Grand Canyon. They were made from a 12-bore shotgun cartridge wired to a spring-loaded trigger. Each of these boxes had a blue sticker on the front, which offered a £5 reward if the film was returned to the nearest Sainsbury's store. Several of these bombs detonated, with various minor injuries occurring as a result. Upon examination, police believed that the reward stickers on the video boxes had been made deliberately difficult to read. One theory was that the bomber had done this in order for the person reading the sticker to move in closer, and then the bomb would explode directly into their face. Further threats were made to Sainsbury's. The bomber informed Sainsbury's security that they had been stalking many of Sainsbury's customers for several months and would start shooting them with a crossbow unless their demands were met. On 25th of November, more devices were detonated, but the police were still no closer to finding who was responsible for them. A device exploded on the driveway of a house which was located near a Sainsbury's store in Chislehurst, Kent. Around half an hour later, a man walking in a nearby alleyway found a Sainsbury's bag full of cakes and biscuits near a woman's top and trousers, which had been laid out neatly on the branches of a tree. This man, unaware of the nearby bomb, took the bag home, leaving the clothes untouched. When he later found out about the bomb which had detonated nearby, he informed the police, who then began investigating the theory that the bomber may be a man dressing in women's clothing to avoid detection. As the supermarkets became busier in the lead up to Christmas, investigators were concerned that with each passing day, the chances of someone becoming seriously injured or killed were dramatically increasing. The construction of the bombs was changing and evolving all of the time. On the 6th of December 1997, a 73-year-old lady accidentally picked up an additional bag along with her shopping bags from Sainsbury's in Ealing. This bag contained an improvised shotgun with the words Mardi Gras on it. It was approximately 20 centimetres long with a timer, spring, copper tube and a shotgun cartridge. Thankfully, the bomb did not detonate and there were no injuries. However, this lady died not long after the event, and her daughter believes that the trauma led indirectly to her mother's death. More bombs within the vicinity of Sainsbury's stores followed. Some caused mass evacuations, others exploded with either no or minor injuries. On 12th of February 1998, a man in his 30s was travelling to work when he stopped at a cash point on his journey and spotted an unattended Sainsbury's bag. He picked up the bag and tossed it into his car. As he was driving towards Blackheath, the bag exploded. The man managed to throw it out of the car window and luckily recovered from all of his injuries. The following month, on 4th of March 1998, a concealed shotgun device was left near the Sainsbury's store in Forest Hill, southeast London. This detonated, causing a 17-year-old to be shot in the leg. They sustained serious injuries and were hospitalised for some time. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the police were working on fulfilling the bomber's demands. It had been requested that large sums of money were paid into a bank account. The bomber planned to access this money by using one of hundreds of cash point cards, which he insisted be added into a computer gaming magazine under the guise of being a promotion. The police had linked these bank account cards to a computer which would trigger an alarm within 3 seconds as soon as the PIN code was entered on a cash machine. An extensive number of officers, as well as the National Crime Squad, were involved in the case. On 28th of April 1998, over 1,000 officers were on duty, still waiting on the bomber to make their move. The alarm was triggered by someone accessing the Mardi Gras account at the Nationwide Building Society cash point in Whitton, southwest London. They had made a withdrawal of £700. It was the first time any money had been taken from the account. Within an hour, the police had arrested a man by the name of Edgar Pierce. Edgar, who was 60 years old at the time, was unemployed after a previously successful career in advertising. He had been divorced from his wife of over 30 years for around a decade. 6 years earlier, Edgar had suffered a significant stroke, which led to a decline in his mental well-being, and he began drinking heavily. He lived in the downstairs area of a 3-bedroomed house in Chiswick, an affluent area of West London, whilst renting out the 3 upstairs bedrooms. He was described by one of the lodgers as well-educated and knowledgeable, but was also known to be unfriendly and reclusive. He would regularly get into arguments with his neighbours, and local children tended to fear him. When Edgar's house was searched, the police found homemade bombs and ammunition, along with a specially adapted briefcase which could house one of the 2 crossbows which they recovered, and more than 100 photographs of shoppers at various stores in London. Edgar's older brother, 67-year-old Ronald, was also arrested. Over a period of 3 years, 36 devices were planted, and police said that it was nothing short of a miracle that there had been no fatalities as a result of these bombs and improvised shotguns. On the 29th of April 1998, the 2 brothers were charged, and when they appeared in court, they both pleaded not guilty to the charges brought against them. In April the following year, Edgar admitted that he, and he alone, was responsible for the Mardi Gras bombings. His brother Ronald pled guilty to a single offence, the possession of a stun gun. For that he received a 1-year sentence. He was released immediately due to time already served. Edgar was convicted of 20 charges, including causing an explosion, possession of explosives and firearms, blackmail, actual bodily harm, and unlawful wounding. He claimed that he had not meant to harm anyone, but had been exercising the public relations skills that he had acquired during a career in advertising, and was indulging in some mental stimulation. At sentencing, his barrister claimed that Edgar suffered from Binswanger's disease. I'll spell that for you. Binswanger''S. This is a rare form of dementia which results in loss of memory and intellectual function, along with changes in mood. His barrister stated that he needed specialist psychiatric therapy rather than imprisonment. However, Detective Superintendent Geoffrey Rees said that Edgar was a callous and calculating man who had been indifferent to causing death or injury. Following a review of medical reports, the judges at the Old Bailey rejected the need for hospitalisation rather than imprisonment. Edgar was sentenced to 224 years in prison. These sentences would run concurrently, which effectively gave him a prison term of 21 years. The judge commented that he was not only motivated by greed, but an insatiable appetite for notoriety. It was estimated that his campaign of terror cost Sainsbury's around £640,000 in lost trade. Barclays had to spend £140,000 on additional security. That concludes today's story. Thanks very much for listening. Please add any comments down below. As always, I'll be interested in reading them. And now it's time for Petty Crime. First up today, we have a snake sent in by Joe. This is Rolo, an albino corn snake. Our first snake in Petty Crimes. Rolo escaped recently and sneaked into one of Jack's drawers. And when searching for Rolo, Joe found her bottle of Disaronno that Jack was, kindly looking after for her. Great detective work, Rolo, sorting out that crime. Next up, sent in by Marsha from Kentucky, is Brody and Sasha. Brody is the Labrador and Sasha is the Yorkshire mix. The story goes that Sasha ran out in front of Marsha. When Marsha stopped and opened the door, Sasha jumped in and Marsha went to the nearest house and asked if they were missing a dog. They said yes, but do you want her? So Sasha became a family member from that day. A few years later, Brody turned up. These two partners in crime are well trained at chasing the cats up the trees, barking at intruders on the farm, and they like to check out the trash can. Thanks to Marsha and her husband for sending the pictures in. Thanks very much for listening to the Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. Many believe he was influenced by the Unabomber, who was being sentenced in America at the time, and also inspired by Rodney Wicello, a policeman who was jailed for 17 years for extortion in the 1990s. Goodbye.